Hi all, thank you for attending. Let me introduce myself. My name is Kjellin. I'm working as an architect in the NSO BU. So this is... Sorry? Yeah, okay. Hi, let me introduce myself. I am Kjellin. I'm working as an architect in the NSO BU. So topic of today is called in-service NED migration. So we are on the operations track. I will not focus so much on service content or service development. I will focus on the operational aspects. So in-service NED migration, what I mean with that, I am going to show you. I'm going to do a live demo where I combine a number of brand new and somewhat recent NSO features. It's an example way of working on how you can migrate your devices without affecting service availability. So you should be able to do this in some cases outside maintenance windows and do this while provisioning service. So what exactly do I mean with that? I have a set of devices configured in my system that I'm going to migrate from Cisco IOSR NectConf 7.3 to that's a NED version. NEDs are the piece of software telling NSO how to talk to devices and how the configuration schema looks like, to a newer version, which is 7.9. And I want to do this without breaking the high availability setup of NSO, and I will provisioning services while doing this. So of course this is a live demo, but it's live demo as in a cooking show. I have already diced my tomatoes and smoked my kippers, but I will be going back and forth between PowerPoint and the terminal and the web UI and the CLI. So before we get down and dirty, let's look at the topology that we're running this setup is. It looks like this. I am running 2 NSOs in a high availability setup, and I have 10 simulated iOS XR devices. This is running locally on my Mac. Both the NSOs are running in separate containers, and the XR devices are running in a third container. All of this is based on the containerized NSO that we released as of NSO 6.1. Even the simulated devices are running there. So I don't strictly need an NSO there, but since I have an NSO installed in a container where I can use NetSim, our simulator, I use that container as a base for setting up my simulated network. So for a total of 3 containers, I have this setup. So first, let us verify that setup, and I'm heading to the NSO web UI. We can quickly check the high availability status, and we can see that the current NSO that I am logged into is running as primary, and NSO2 is running as secondary. So it seems to be set up and everything is fine. Configured as not set means that I have not defined a nominal role for this. I have just attached it manually, which is fine. Going into Insights Managers, which is released in NSO 6.0, we can see some status about what's happening in NSO. Currently not too much, but we can see here I have 10 devices and I have 10 successful connects, so that looks fine. We should be almost good to go. Let's just verify that I have done my homework and go into the device manager to see that we have the devices. I have XR0 to XR9, and you can see here on the type that I am on NSO 7.3, which is our starting point for this. So far, so good. Sure.
Device manager is the same like inventory?
It shows you which devices that NSO manages. So yes, in a way, it is an inventory, yes. It shows you some information about it too, what services affected are touching those devices and what version of the NED that you use to communicate it. So yes, you can consider it an inventory. Yes, and please free to interrupt meanwhile, or we do questions. So yes, even you. But some people will get nicer answers than others. So what are we going to do? This is the outline of what we're going to do today. First, I'm going to trigger some service invocations because this will be much more interesting if we're actually doing something with NSO while migrating. Then I'm going to add a new NED, still with HA up and not taking anything down. I'm going to redeploy a new service version. So I'm going to load in some new service code, which takes into account that we now have 2 different versions of the NEDs running. And then I'm going to trigger NED migration. These managed devices, I'm going to tell them, go from using 7.3 of Cisco OS XR NED to 7.9. And I'm going to do that via something called phase provisioning, which is also brand new. And we should be done. So 1 and 5 is outside what would be considered a MOP. 2, 3, and 4 would be the stages that would be performed to migrate these devices. So for the first part, adding a new NED version to a running system, we have now in NSO 6.1 introduced a new feature that we call package add. So I'm going to expand a little bit on this. Package add allows you to add new NED versions to running systems. This is not general for all kind of NSO packages, but it works for NSO NEDs, given a certain set of constraints. When it works, you will when it's able to do this, it will be hitless. It's not instant. It takes a few minutes, but it will not block anything. You can do this in a running system and use the system as usual. So, what are the constraints? If you're familiar on NSO network, then this will be easier to grasp, but it's not super complicated. NSO contains a number of models showing how the device tree looks like on the node, on the device that you're configuring. And these are, in the database schema, they are all under a certain point, schema amount it's called. And as long as the changes in the NED are concerning device configuration changes, modeling, then we're fine. The NEDs might also include global models, which are available all outside this mounted point. And that might be more tricky. But don't let this discourage you from using this feature, because it will tell you. This will not break anything. You can try. And if it's successful without any service impact. If it's successful, it just tells you need to do a full package reload. So that's fairly kind to you in that sense. And this is a part that I'm not going to do live. That is due to the fact that it takes a few minutes and it's not so fun to look at. Also here, this is not something that should discourage you, because it takes a few minutes, but it doesn't block anything there. It also does not scale with the size of the database. The time it takes is inversely proportional to the number and size of loaded modules. So if you run it on an empty CDB with the same sets of empty database with the same sets of models loaded, it will take about the same as if you have 50 gigabytes database. So this is a bit how this works. And this one comes in 2 flavors. If you're running without high availability, you do packages add. It will scan your load directory and try to add new NEDs. If you want to do this over HA, you do packages HA sync and add, and this will perform this on both nodes while keeping the high availability setup intact. So back to the web UI. Let's see what we want to see here. Looking up here, you can see the packages I have installed in NSO. Now we have passed the package add section, which I didn't do live. So I have Cisco OS 7.3 and 7.9, and a couple of other packages, which I will get to shortly. Are you with me so far? Yeah. No, it keeps it up, distributes the package. And
were you asking if you're using the abound command in an HA setup?
Yes. That you won't be allowed to do that.
Okay, so you disable HA, you do it,
and then you disable it. You do it on both the primary and the secondary, and then you reconnect it. Okay. That's the if you want to use this one in an HA setup, that's where you go. This is the whole command, so it will scan your load directory and see what it can do. Yeah. Yes, so there's no arguments here. this command will not impact your other packages or your service. It will either successfully add them or not add anything. So the worst outcome of this is the state you had before. And meanwhile, service is available. Right, that's a bit what I touched upon in the morning. In the morning, in the beginning of the talk, or earlier. It's a bit detail on that. It checks if it's a NED. It checks if the NED has changes being done to modules that are considered global. This is very close to NSO internal. So this essentially only works for NEDs, not general packages, and subset of NEDs. I realize this is not super clear, but it will not run for your custom packages. If you have a custom NED, it might work. Yeah. I'm sorry, I don't know what strict NED mode is. All right, then I follow you. I don't actually know exactly. I would expect this to take that into account, the supported versions, but I can't guarantee it. But I can figure if. No, it could look at the loaded one, right? It doesn't try to do reload. Okay, let's. If you catch me later, I'll bring you up in contact with one of our developers who has all the details, and we can go through it. Thanks. So, right, we have now. Sure.
Common package add is only for the new package or also for the upgrade of package?
No, only new.
Only new.
Right now, so yeah. So this if you upgrade an existing package, it's a full package reload. Right. So we are now where we have two versions of the NEDs in the systems, and we might want to have a service that can handle both. In the best of worlds, your service is unaffected by the NED changes, but there might be you have a new path that you want to take into account, or whatever you want to do something with the new NED version. And in our APIs, we provide a number of facilities for that. So I wasn't going to look at so much code, but you can look at the NED version in your service code and take action based on that. And that is what I do in my service that I'm going to update right now, because I have an example. The attentive reader might have noticed that I have not started provisioning any services yet, that as I promised. But since I didn't do the package add live, it doesn't really matter. Let's provision some services and keep that running. So I have a little script that once every 10 seconds provisions a service. Touches a random device. Now they happen to be in some kind of order. They shouldn't be. They could be because it's random. And it creates with a random name. So this just is a service that sets an NTP server address on the device, or a host name. It's just a random string. So this I want to keep running when I actually do the operations on the system. So this would be that this could be CNC provisioning stuff, it could be your OSS, it could be Portal, your operations guys, whoever is using the NSO as usual while we do the task of migrating NEDs. So what we were going to do was to redeploy a new service version. So what does it mean to do a package redeploy? It means loading new templates and new code without doing a full package reload. The full package reload, as I mentioned, that's service affecting. It brings NSO out of service. You cannot provision anything. You cannot really use it for your business case, but sometimes your changes in your service or in your packages doesn't affect the data model. The data model is the same, but the logic is different. So if it's strictly code or template changes, these can be reloaded without doing the database upgrade. And Christian, you might remember which version we introduced it in. I don't. No, no, it's been introduced in one of the 5.x's and then improved later. So it's probably there in your current installation. It looks like this: package name redeploy. So we're going to do this on my example service that I am provisioning. This operation is not HA aware, meaning that you cannot do this only on the primary node. You need to do this both on the primary node and the secondary node. So that I will do now. So this is my primary node. And the service name was devdays. Now, this is the tricky. Is anyone realizing what step I missed? I of course need to install the service as well. So what's more fun than watching me delete files in a terminal on a big screen? As I mentioned earlier, I am running this in the containers that we deliver. And I have the packages directory mounted, which means that I can do the file things where I install packages and move them into my running containers on my local file system. So I'm right now just on my Mac. I also only have one package directory for both the containers, and let me go off on a little sidetrack here because the containers are new. This I strictly do not recommend. It might be tempting to do it this way, to have one package directory and mount it and use it on all your containers. Because anyway, you want to have the same package everywhere. Otherwise, NSO HA will not function, and you will anyway want to have the same functionality all over your cluster. But it comes with some interesting side effects. That we have a feature called HA package sync and reload. So if you need to do a full reload, you can do that in an HA aware manner. You install the package on the primary, and it will distribute it to the secondary and do a full reload. If you do this structure, that you have one package directory mounted in all your containers, then NSO will try to overwrite its own packet, and you will end up with an undefined behavior. So I'm doing this right now. For me, it's really nice because I only have to copy files once, but I strictly can't say that you do that. So this is the package directory that NSO loads packages from in my containers. What I'm going to do, to recap, going back from the sidetrack, is that I'm going to install a new service version, redeploy that service version's code while running the services. So first, I remove the service, and then I copy the new one. I call it 1.1, but I copy it in with the same name as before. Okay. Let's see. Right, I did that right. So to recap, I need to do package reload on both nodes. My service provisioning is running. So in the CLI here, I do a packages devdays23 redeploy. I start on the first node, and while that one is running, I go to the second node and do the same thing. This takes a minute or two. So the first one is done. sec one is coming. Let's have a look at our service provisioning. No errors. This is actually done through Python, through MAPI, not through RESTconf or anything. So if one of these would fail, we would see an exception here directly. And they would stop working. And we're done. Right. So that was the package redeploy thing. So if we skip back here, what we have done, we have added a new NED, we have redeployed the new service version, and now we're going to do the actual NED migration. And to do that, to do the NED migration, I'm going to use something called phased provisioning, which is a new NSO feature delivered in NSO 6.1 a couple of weeks ago. So I'm not going to dig into super details about this. I'm going to show you how it's configured for this use case, but I really recommend to attend the dedicated session for this feature, which is tomorrow. So what it allows you to do is to phase your provisioning. That is, you don't need to say that I have 10 devices that I need to migrate. I don't want to do all the 10 at the same time because I want to phase it out in a controlled manner and do a few at a time to limit service impact and do it more controlled. That makes it easier to do it in a running system. So this feature is implemented as an NSO package that you download separately through downloads.cisco.com, close to the same place as your NSO installers. It can be used for lots of other things that you want to provision in a phased way, like service redeploys. So NED migration is just one use case. Essentially, it calls one action and allows you to configure, check whether it was successful or not. It allows you to schedule this. You can either trigger it manually, or you can schedule it to run at a certain time. If you want to say, do this phased, but still do it in a maintenance window or low traffic hours. So the configuration of phase provisioning for NED migration that I use for this is that I have a target node, which is device. This is, where the action is run. I have a filter on which devices to run it with. In my demo setup here, not strictly needed, but it's neat. So everything that starts with XR is my target devices. Something under devices device starts with XR. I have defined which action I'm calling. That action name is migrate, which is how we call NED migration within NSO. And I have specified what arguments this action takes. In this case, a new NED ID. So this tells this task, NED migrate, which is executed through phase provisioning to migrate all devices that start with XR to the new XR version. I also need to have a policy telling it how this will be phased out. Mine is very simple. It can be more extensive, but mine is do 2 at a time. And as long as no more than 2 has failed, continue. Allow 2 failures of this. There is a lot more to this. You could add validation of after this has been called to see if it's successful or not. But I'm content with the action returning okay. I could have some expert doing that, but that will be more in-depth described tomorrow in the separate chat. So let's run this. First of all, let's head back to, yes, our service provisioning is running. Migrate is also, the NED migrate action is also high availability aware. You don't need to do this on all your NSO nodes in the cluster. You run this on your primary. So to do this, I do phased provisioning task, NED migrate. If we go back to the slide, this is the task that I have configured, and I do run. Success true. But that just means that it has been processed. It's not that we are done. To see how it's doing, we can do show, phased provisioning, task status, and we can specify the actual task. All right, this was too quick. It actually faced, yeah, I was too slow in doing this, and the reason that this is so quick is that I don't really have any data in my devices. So when I ran this previously, I was able to, it went slower. I don't know why it's quicker today. Anyway, I migrate my devices, my provisioning is moving on. And let's go back to the web UI, check the device manager, and here we are with 10 Cisco XR devices on iOS XR 7.9. If this would have taken a bit more time, in this stage you would have been able to see which devices was complete and which was running, and if someone had failed for some reason, it would have listed that as well. So it gives you very good control of what happens. And another thing I like to expand on here is that since I have a service that can handle both NED versions that we redeployed, I wouldn't be super concerned if I had a failure running here. It's something I would have to deal with and everything, but I wouldn't really, it wouldn't be cause of emergency. It would be something you could look at and deal with. So if you write your service that can handle both versions and you run NED migration like this, you don't have to be super scared in case something fails. And it's the same with service provisioning, right? Given that we are now concurrent and everything, we might get conflicts while provisioning services. You might have an error here, so you might, in your northbound system or whatever logic you use to deploy a service, perhaps something would have gone wrong here. It shouldn't have, but it could have restarted. And that's a way of thinking of when you try to do this in service, things shouldn't go wrong. They might go wrong, sometimes they will go wrong, but it doesn't have to be the end of the world. A device that fails to migrate functions as before, and if you write your service to support both versions, that's okay. You can go to your logs, you can check the output, you can try again. And that's the beauty of running NED migration in 6.1, where we have parallel transactions, and running it as a user process rather than a full database update. Okay, ask that question tomorrow. I didn't dig super much into phase provisioning because I didn't want to capitalize on their how you, yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah, I guess so. I mean, this is recorded, but I should probably publish this on DevNet or something. Yeah, yeah. I always say that I'm going to do it after this, but push me, and I will. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I agree. It lends itself to an article. Very nice. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's something is everyone does a little bit differently, but that's the most obvious example on why to update the NED. You have done your SWIM, your software remote management, update your firmware update your software on the device, and then you want to run it, and that come back to having how you define the services. I would definitely update the device first. I mean, update the service first, then the device, and then the NED. But it all comes down to, as soon as I say something like this, there's someone comes and tells me, but the devices work like this. So, and it's very hard to give a general. I don't dare to on standing foot like now to make up the exact general use case for how to do that, but I would do it that way. A service that can handle both versions, update the firmware on the device, and then migrate the NED. I'm not sure that is correct at all. but your mileage might vary. The other reason for doing this, which is actually more frequent, is because you might have new functionality in the NED that wasn't there before. You cover more of the configuration. There might be some other functionality, or there's a bug fix that you're interested in that you want to do. So that's definitely. Yeah, definitely. Software image swim software update on the devices is a use case out of the box. But you can see here these manual steps that in the CLI 3.4 it could be triggered by workflow. It lends as well kind of nicely to that, I would say. And then you have another way of interacting with this. These are steps that follow, so that pieces together real nicely. All right. Thanks for all the questions. To summarize, I didn't demo a specific feature. I showed you a way of working for a common use case, which demonstrated a number of new and recent features. I should add the web UI and the insights manager here actually, because it's very helpful to see what's going on. And if you have more questions, catch me later. And if you're interested, go to the phase provisioning talk tomorrow. And thank you all for your participation.